and it's at a T intersection in East Los Angeles where victim car is at the limit line getting ready to turn right. It's a red light. There's no traffic, so he can stop and turn, but he doesn't turn. He just waits there. Well, the guy in the back give him a little beep, hey, wake up, turn right. And the guy doesn't move. He's waiting for the red light to turn green. The guy in the back car gets up, goes and kicks his door. He kicks his door. The guy in the front car picks up a gun and goes, bam, and kills him.
Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yeah, good morning. My true name is Gilbert Carrillo, but everybody knows me, and I've gone for years by just plain Gil Carrillo.
Okay. Gil, who did you work for?
Worked for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for 38 years.
And what was your last position?
My last position was a supervising lieutenant, Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. I was team lieutenant 3, and I had 14 investigators working for me.
Okay, and you worked in the homicide unit for how long?
I worked 21 years in the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau as an investigator, and my last 5 years prior to retirement was a homicide lieutenant.
Okay. Before we get into your career and some background stuff, give me a little bit of information about the LA Sheriff's Department. How big are they? What jurisdiction did they cover compared to like LAPD?
LAPD and Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department are usually grouped together as two largest on the West Coast. At any given time, they're probably number 3 and 4 in the nation in as far as how large they are. Right now, both agencies are down. The Sheriff's Department, now I've been gone 15 years almost, I think, and normally right now, I just heard a number the other day by LAPD saying they had 9,000 sworn. And so we're right around the same number. And at times we go more, then they catch up and they go ahead, and then we catch up and we go ahead. So we're right around the same number. Okay. The jurisdictions we have, I believe right now in the county of Los Angeles, there are 23 substations, and those are patrol stations. That's not including different units within the department, vice bureau, robbery, whatever they call crimes against children these days, because they change names constantly. Homicide Bureau, the Detective Division, Narcotics Bureau. And primarily the only difference between the two departments, as I could see, is the fact that Los Angeles Police Department has homicide detectives assigned to every station they have. And they cover all the incorporated areas of the city of Los Angeles. Anything that is the city of Los Angeles is under the jurisdiction of Los Angeles Police Department. The county of Los Angeles, on the other hand, covers all unincorporated area of Los Angeles County. To include incorporated cities, let us say like the city of Arcadia or the city of Montebello, any incorporated city that contracts with the Sheriff's Department to handle either their entire police functions or just their homicide bureaus and our crime labs. As I said, Los Angeles Police Department has homicide detectives at every station. Then they have one unit that is smaller that is called Robbery Homicide Bureau, a Robbery Homicide Division for them. And they have a robbery, I call them the big boys from Dover. So, as an example, O.J. Simpson. That case was initially handled by one of the Valley divisions. And as soon as they found out it involved O.J. Simpson, immediately they notified Robbery Homicide, and Robbery Homicide took over the investigation. Sheriff's Department has no homicide investigators at the station level. We have one central homicide bureau. Back in the old days, we used beepers. But since that time, you have an office, you have a central bureau office. You have, right now, I'd say probably about 90 investigators assigned there. which part of it includes missing persons and the cold case file. Excuse me, unsolved murders. And those teams are made up of 6 14-man or 14-person teams. So there's team 1 through 6, a lieutenant for each of them, and when you're on call, you either have the call from Monday through Friday morning, Monday morning to Friday morning, and that'll take 2 teams. Then the next 2 teams come on Friday morning till Monday morning, and then the next 2 teams come back on Monday while the first 2 teams are having days off. So that way you're covered 24/7, 365. And if in fact you have a busy weekend or you have a couple of officer-involved shootings, well, then you just tap into the next team. You just keep going like that. You work off a rotation. Very few. Once in a while, something special comes in, and you're actually hand-picked. You know, we were, as an easy example, I worked the Night Stalker case. Mm-hmm. So that was a big, high-profile case. We did good. We got prosecution. And as soon as we were done with that, the next team, for the next murder that came up, it's their murder. But instead, they pulled myself and my partner out of rotation and sent us. You know, they said, hey, these guys are good. We want to put and it was assist on a deputy-involved murder, where a deputy was murdered.
So, Gil, I take it then, unlike LAPD that has this robbery homicide squad that's kind of an elite unit, you guys didn't necessarily have that, but there were a couple of you that were handpicked for those.
For special cases, yes.
Okay.
And that was at the discretion of the captain. Not necessarily by anybody, just the captain said, hey, I want these 2 guys on it.
Okay. Let's get in a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the city of Pico, Rivera. When I first got there, it was just the city of Pico. Then I believe around 1957, they added Rivera to it and incorporated it. And so I grew up in the city of Pico, Rivera. I grew up on the block. I was headed nowhere quick. I had 6 sisters and no brothers, and a mother and father that both worked. And a 3-bedroom home there in fine city of Pico, Rivera. And at the age of 17, a cop took me home and told my parents, sign for him to get off the streets or he's going to end up dead or in prison. I was hanging out on the block with the fellas, part of the hood, and like I said, I was headed nowhere fast. My parents, they signed for me to get off the streets, so at age 17, I joined the United States Army. And I turned 18 November 29th of that year, and February 1st, I was in Vietnam.
Is it fair to say that you were hanging out with, I mean, it's East LA. Were you hanging out with gang members? Not so.
It wasn't East LA. East LA was further west.
Okay.
But if you're anybody familiar with Los Angeles County at all, we don't have the jurisdictional lines could be the yellow dividing line in the middle of the highway. I mean, it's just the suburbs all the way across.
Yeah.
I was hanging around, all of us guys were hanging around with each other. We didn't know if we were bad, if we were good. We knew we had fun. We did things we weren't supposed to be doing. And the realities are, those guys off the block that went into the armed forces ended up getting out and leading productive lives, no matter what they did. Oh. Those that stood back on the block are either dead or in prison today.
So what kind of kid were you? Were you studious? Were you into sports? What?
I was lazy. I was no good. I was not a good student. I can remember as a kid going through parent conference, and it was always the same speech. Your son has the intelligence. Your son is just lazy. He won't do his work. He won't do this, won't do that. And I'd get the same speech from my dad. This has got to improve. That was about it. You know, I never got anything. I was into music. I loved playing a saxophone player. I loved playing sax at an early age. I think I was 15. And not only was I playing for the school band, but then I was asked to see if I was interested in joining a rock and roll band. And I did. So all of a sudden, by age 16, back then, I'm making anywhere from 10 to 25 bucks an hour playing dances, or as we call them, gigs. Hey, you got a gig, 15, 25, 10 to 25 bucks an hour. where you didn't have to be pretty. All the girls wanted you. It was just so much fun. And it was a great time. Music was the only thing. Had it not been for music, I'd have probably been a lot more trouble a lot earlier in life. Because to practice, you'd have to get away from the guys. And I'd go to a city of South El Monte where that's where the manager lived, and that's where practices were held. And then on the weekends, back then there was a lot of Friday, Saturday nights where we're out playing.
Was there a push in your family for education? Was there, hey,
No.
No, nothing.
No.
But you later on got your college degree, though.
I did, because when I went into the military, I ended up in Vietnam. Vietnam changed my entire life.
How so?
Gave me an appreciation for life, gave me a new reason for living. I understood what can happen if you don't. I understand that there's more to life than just banging. So I came out of the military 3 years later, and I had 3 goals in life. Number one was I wanted to become a cop. I wanted to give back what that cop gave to me, and he gave me my life. I wanted to be able to do that for somebody else. Number 2, I wanted to go to college. I had new standards, and I knew I was mature enough to go to college, because when I sent for my transcripts, I was embarrassed to look at them. And I obviously thought D stood for damn good, and F was fabulous. So I went ahead, and they let me into the junior college, and I'm the only one in my family. No siblings, no cousins, no nothing in my family had ever gone to college. And at that time, I was still thinking only rich white people went to college. And I got in because the local junior college had to take me in because I was a Vietnam vet. And then my whole life turned around. Now, instead of just going, I wanted to get A's. I was hooked. I just wanted to do the best I can, make up for lost time. And I remember the local assemblyman, Congress, somebody sent a letter to my mom and dad's house saying, congratulations, your son has made the honor roll or dean's list, whatever they called it at that time. And first thing my mom said, Mio, are you cheating? And then I said, no, Mom, this is the new me. This is what I want. And my third goal was to hook up with my ex-girlfriend that had written me a Dear John when I was in Vietnam. I wanted to hook back up with her, getting her eaten out of the palm of my hand, and then I wanted to dump her. I wanted to watch her suffer. I wanted revenge. And so I got out in June of 1970, started college right away, the summer session. Obviously, I became a cop. Started filing, and I was able to get in. And by September of 1970, I'd hooked back up with my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, and got her to the point where she'd eaten out of the palm of my hand. And the day after Christmas, 1970, booyah, we got married. And so we just celebrated our 54th wedding anniversary. So I keep telling her, hey, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I'll take it.
I got some questions for you about your wife as we go, but was it the interaction with that initial cop who said basically to your parents, hey, sign him up, he's got to go to the military. Was it that made you want to be a cop?
Not until after I had matured and had a new appreciation. See what he had done for me.
Right.
My whole mindset had changed.
Right.
And that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Okay. So you start when you're like 21, right?
Yes.
Tell me the approach there. Did you always want to work for LA Sheriff? Was it LAPD? Did you was a shotgun approach? How did you end up at LA Sheriff?
I filed for both departments, LAPD and the Sheriff's Department. And to tell you the truth, I wanted to be with LAPD better. I like their uniforms. I just said, whichever one hires me first, if they're going to hire me, that's who I'll go with. And it turned out the Sheriff's Department came across first. And I passed and got into their academy and got through the academy, and the rest is history. Am I sorry that I didn't go to LAPD? No, not at all.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I went with the Sheriff's Department. And the only difference between the two, I tell everybody, it's kind of like the Marines and the Army. They both do the same job. They're both good at what they do. The difference is the Marines get all the publicity and they look pretty in their uniforms. LAPD is the same way. Everything's the same. I don't know, in the old days, you'd make an arrest out in the field, and before you could take it in and book it, you had to get a sergeant out there to approve the arrest. Sheriff's Department, you make the arrest, you go in and you book it. And once you're in and booking, then you run it by a sergeant, let them know what you brought them there for. But LAPD, you had to do it over here. You had to have that supervisory opinion before you cross the threshold of taking them in. I don't know what it's like for them now. They're a good department. I just wanted to go just because I like their uniform better. But I'm glad that I went with the Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so one thing I find very interesting when I'm talking to sheriff deputies in particular is you started off as a correctional deputy. So a little bit.
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't? I thought you started.
Okay, there's two different.
Sorry.
It was my mistake. We have correctional officers that work.
Okay.
I didn't start as a correctional officer. I started as a deputy sheriff, but I worked the jail.
Okay, so that was my question then. So what I find interesting is you guys typically start off in the jail as opposed to immediately going on patrol. But because you had that experience in the military so young, maybe your experience is a little bit different. But how was that as 21-year-old working in the jail with these, people that are getting arrested, inmates? How was that for you?
It really wasn't that difficult for me. I can remember as clear as day. No matter where I worked, I'm going to have fun. And I have the ability to communicate because of where I brought up. I could communicate with the inmates. And you treat somebody decent, like you'd like to be treated, they're going to do the same thing, even bad guys. And if because they're locked up, and an example might be, to explain this, as a homicide investigator, I had a case. An inmate passed away. He got beat up in the jail cell. His story was, I got beat up by a deputy, so they had to take him to the hospital for recovery. And he went to the hospital, and while he's in recovery, he ended up dying. And he died as a result of pneumonia and proximate cause of death. He had these injuries he sustained that were put on him by the deputy, which caused him to go to the hospital, caused him to get pneumonia. So the proximate cause of death is death at the hands of another. It wasn't a natural death. So I'm investigating it, and in talking to, we used to call them tanks, or rows of jail cells, and each one of these rows had what we called a tank trustee. He got number one cell, and that was like an unsworn assistant. He'd get there, and on cinnamon roll day, you'd give him some extra cinnamon rolls, and he made sure that everybody was in line. He took care of the tank, which made it much easier on me. So he was your assistant. Well, I went to talk to the tank from, I'm interviewing him, and he says, "Hey, Carrillo, it's simple." He said, had it been any one of the other deputies, as opposed to the one that he allegedly did this, he said, we'd be saying, yeah, we saw him do it. This guy didn't do shit to him. You go back and you look at his medical records, the guy had some kind of disease. He was always falling and hurting himself on his own. He says, nobody did. But had it been one of the other deputies in charge that day that treats us chicken shit, we'd have ratted him out. We'd have said it was him. So here, this deputy who treated inmates fairly and nicely, the inmates were willing to back him up.
Yeah.
And so when I was young and worked in jail, I learned that very quickly. Treat people the way you'd like to be treated, and it's not that bad. Plus, I knew the street vernacular, so I could talk to them, I could joke with them, I could do anything. So I didn't have a problem working the jails.
Did it help you working in the jails when you got on the street, though?
It all does. It teaches you, for those who, I guess for some, if you were brought up with a silver spoon, or had never been in a fight, never been in trouble, all of a sudden you're thrown out to the wolves in the streets, and it's going to lead to a problem. You don't know how to act. Some of these people are overbearing, and they think because I carry a badge, I'm big, I'm bad, and they'll stop. There's nothing more fearful. You pull a gun on somebody and tell them to stop, and they're looking right at you, telling you, go ahead and shoot. And they keep coming at you, and you got no reason to really shoot them. You say, stop or I'll shoot. And they keep coming. They don't stop. Well, does that give you the authority to go ahead and shoot them? No, it doesn't. But that kid that has never been up against the wall or never been in a problem, it's going to be problematic for him until he learns how to communicate with others, see what he's got to do. So it's a little more difficult. For me, it wasn't. You know, I got a lot of people. Maybe I was nuts. I don't know. Jeez.
When you got on patrol after you were out of work in the jail, did you ever run into any of the people that you had seen in jail?
I ran into people that are from my block in jail. As a matter of fact, I got a commendation. They were starting to riot in one of the tanks in the jail. They were starting riot. They were lighting fire. They were throwing shit. And so I got sent down there immediately. And tank trustee happened to be a guy from the block, from where I grew up, and we were friends. And I'm saying, Mike, you know, what's up, Jolly? What's going on? We need to stop this shit. Oh, Gil, man, I'm sorry to you, but hey, I got to tell you, we've been asking for change. We've been asking for this, asking for that. Been asking to talk to the captain, and nobody listens to us. I said, I'll tell you what, get him inside the cells. I'll get you to the captain. All right? Deal? Deal. So you got everybody back inside. Riot stops. I went upstairs. I told them, hey, they need to talk. No biggie. They just need to talk. And so because Gil Carrillo quashed the riot, I got a commendation. They didn't know the guy was a buddy of mine from the streets. So guys there were guys in jail that threatened to kill me because they were just insane. They were bad guys. At least I was there as a ride-along cadet. I was going through the academy. On the weekends, they'd make you go out and ride along with an experienced deputy. Mm-hmm. I went along. There was a pursuit that night. Shots fired. One dead. Two detectives had witnessed a gangbanger kill somebody. They went in pursuit. When they went in pursuit, the neighborhood where these guys were running to, they were prepared in case the fellow gang members were chased. So as soon as they turned the corner and here comes the other car, they opened up on the deputies again. Deputies were able to overcome. The guy wrecked. They got him in custody. I got out there. I was in a car as a cadet, and I remember the sergeants, Walter II and Dan Gardner. I'm out in the back parking lot waiting for a radio car, see if there's any radio cars left. And they said, come on, kid, get in the back. And they took me on the ride of my life. I had toe grips in the floorboard by the time I was done. I said, holy Jesus, I got out there. They had the guy down the ground. They had him in custody, and he's spitting and cussing and everything else. And the guy's name was Freddie Lopez. And we used to call him Fat Freddie. Freddie had a gut on him, and they took him into custody. He was from Little Valley. And so that's as a cadet. Now I graduate from the academy. I'm inside the jail working as a deputy. And I remember you were out there the day they arrested me. And he starts cussing me out, and you wait, I get out of here, you're dead, you're a piece of shit, I'll never forget you, yada, 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 yada. So I said, all right then, we'll see. Well, a few years later, I'm working patrol, I'm in a one-man unit on a day shift, and I see Fat Freddie Lopez walking down the street. And I just drove up next to him, and I had my gun on my lap with my hand on it. I said, hello, Freddie. I said, remember me? He said, oh, how you doing, sir? I said, no, it wasn't how you doing, sir, last time I saw you. You said you were going to kill me when you got out on the streets. He says, no, that was a different me, sir. I'm different now. I'm not like that anymore. I said, okay, well, I'm just letting you know. I'm out here, and if you fart, flinch, burp, or sneeze in front of me, I'm going to kill you because you've made a threat on my life, and I've told the other deputies here, they got to be careful with you, Freddie, so don't do it. I said, this is not your neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. And it belongs to law enforcement and the good citizens that live around here. Mm. Not a problem, sir, not a problem. I said, okay, Freddie, just let you know. And I drove off. About 3 months later, they found Freddie at the Ontario Speedway. He'd been murdered. They tortured him and they killed him because they found out, I guess, he became an informant. Mm. Not for me, but inside the jail, that's how he got out. Mm-hmm. And so the mob went ahead and had him assassinated. Mm. You know, they killed him. So Yeah, I did run into people in there in the streets, but I had to make sure that they understood I'm not running from anybody. I'm here to work, and I'm busy, and I'm observant, and that's just the way it was.
Yeah. When you get on patrol, is it an eye opener for you? Are you scared at all, or you're ready to go?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't afraid at all. They send you out there at that time. They'd send you out there with another man for 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, then they send you to day shift by yourself, and you may stay there for another 2 months, maybe 3, and then they go back to regular partner. You go back to whatever shift they're going to send you to with a partner. Everything over there was 2-man units, and so I wasn't afraid till they sent me out by myself. And when they sent me out by myself, it's like, holy shit, I'm all by myself. What do I do? You know, I was afraid. I was intimidated.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long to become accustomed to realize that, you know, you have to learn your abilities, you know, who you can stop, who you can't stop by yourself, when to get back up, when you don't need backup, when to plot things in front. And you really don't start learning an awful lot. You learn most of it as soon as you're done there and you go back to that 2-man car. Now you're just partners. And that's where you do most of your learning. You know, where you can just talk and carry on and see what the other guy's thinking and you're thinking. So it's a lot better there.
So it's just a lot of repetition for you, just
Yes.
kind of figuring it out. Was there, back in the day, is there, I ask this all the time, was there a typical call for you that you would go to back in the day?
No.
Or just everything at the
Everything.
time? Was there one crime, were drugs a big deal back then? What was the major crime that was happening at the time?
Well, drugs and gun were always the big thing. And the only thing that ever bothered me was any kind of child abuse, you know, where they were either beating the kids or they're, you know, doing something, beating wives. You know, I didn't like spousal abuse. That was before they had spousal abuse laws. You know, I didn't like spousal abuse. I just didn't like bullies.
Yeah.
And so bullies were taken care of. You know, I no sympathy for them. If there's any way possible, if they violated the law, they went to jail. If they wanted to fight, a lieutenant early on in my career who had been beefed back to the jails, he was there. He told us one night, he got us together and he said, there's a fine line out there between you and the bad guys. And if the bad guys, they can do whatever they want to as long as they stay on that side of the line. The minute they cross the line to get to you, he says, then they're yours. And you fight them, but you beat them. You make sure that they're not going to want to fight another cop again. Because if you don't and they beat you, then it just means it's going to be that much harder for the next guy. So you don't put your hands on them, not because you're angry, not because you're mean. Don't put your hands on anybody until it's that time, until they cross that line. And when they do, make sure they don't want to do it again. And so that's the way I worked. Fortunately, because of my size, there wasn't a bunch of pushing and shoving. You know, I was in East LA, and I guess I can say this because I am Hispanic. There weren't a bunch of big Mexicans. You know, most of them were kind of, you know, under 6-footers, and I was up above 6 feet, so I didn't have that many problems.
Yeah. Because you're like 6'3", right?
6'3".
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tell me about the progression here. So you're on patrol, and is this fair to say, do you get recruited into plainclothes? How does it, what's your next assignment?
I got asked to join, asked to be still part of patrol in uniform. They had gang units. And as opposed to handling family disturbances and report calls, burglaries, auto theft, stuff like that, your job was to go out there and suppress gang members. And so I did that for a few months. And then I said, I want out of this. Just send me back to patrol. I don't like this shit. And so I got out of it. And then they came back a few months later and they said, we'd like you to come back to gangs. And I said, I don't want to go back to gangs. And they said, why not? I said, because the way you work gangs is counterproductive. You can't go up to a gang member in uniform and start talking to him and think that he's going to open up to you. You know, it doesn't work like that. You guys need a plainclothes unit that can go up there and shoot the shit with these guys and treat them decently and interact with them. He says, well, that's what we're doing. And we want you to head the unit out. I said, okay, let's give it a try.
So Gil, one thing that I watched some podcasts with you, and one thing I find really interesting, it's almost a theme throughout your career. So at that point, how old are you when they come to you and want you to run that?
Probably around, see, 21, 24, 25, probably around 26, 27.
Okay, but not super old,
No.
not having a vast amount of experience, but kind of the theme that I've seen throughout your career is people coming to you and going, "Hey, Gil, we need you to do this," or even a seasoned detective coming to you and going, "I want you to be my partner." What do you think that you have? What is your quality that makes people drawn to you?
I'm Mexican. I'm not that smart to be able to tell you why. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's a combination of my energy, my enthusiasm, my personality. I'm not afraid to work. I work hard. If you're going to do something, do it right and do it hard.
Okay.
My integrity, nobody's ever challenged my integrity at all. And my enthusiasm, nobody has as much fun. We work together. We're going to have fun. I remember taking a trainee. A good friend of mine said, "Hey, I have a trainee that I'm training right now." I said, "Yeah." He says, "I need a body swap. I just bought a brand new cab and I'd like to go up there. But I need somebody experienced to work with him." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll take him." And he said, "Well, before you say yes," he said, "I got to tell you, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer." He said, "Matter of fact, I'll tell you, he's a dumb shit." And I said, "Okay, I'll take him. Not a problem. It's not like I'm going to be stuck with him forever." And so he came. First night we worked together, he gets in the car, and this guy is so nervous, so uptight. And I told him, I said, "Son, let's understand three things. Number one, I'm not your training officer. My name is not Sir. My name is Gil." I said, "Number two, the most important thing we got to do tonight is go home safe. And number three, you're going to relax and we're going to have fun. Because if it ain't fun, then it's work. We're going to have fun, son. So just relax." Well, I got him to the point where he was relaxing, and the kid could write paper. He was good. And I told us, I said, "Anytime you want off, I'll take him. Matter of fact, you want to dump him permanently right now, I could take on a trainee." And so he said, "Really?" The guy didn't realize. I said, "Bob, he's scared shitless of you." And he says, "Okay." And that kid not only did it eventually get off training, he turned out to be a sharp cop there in the streets. So we're going to have fun. And I remember the sheriff, being with the sheriff at one time. They asked me to go on loan to the sheriff's office. They were looking for somebody that had integrity, had a certain trust level amongst the troops, was not afraid to tell the boss the truth, and was not thin-skinned. And they said, "Gil, we want you to come up." And I said, "All right." So I went out there to try this out. If it doesn't work out for you, go right back to Homicide. If it doesn't work out for us, we'll send you back to Homicide. I said, "Okay." So my job at that time was to go out to different stations and listen to the concerns that they had at the station level, write them up, and this was without anybody above the rank of deputy there. Just between us and right here, we're all just cops. And you tell me what the concerns are of your department. And they would tell me. I would write them up, diplomatically, of course. 2 weeks later, the sheriff would come out and I'd say, "Here's the list. Here are the questions." So he doesn't know who asked them. He's just looking at questions that are written down for him to answer. And he would answer them. And we'd take care of problems. Because he doesn't get the information from these guys down here.
Right.
Everything's filtered between captain, commander, chiefs, executives. So he's getting it firsthand. Everything was good. Well, he was encouraging me to study at one time. I was studying for the sergeant's exam because he had told me. He was at our bureau one day and he said, "Hey, Gil, how's it going?" He says, "Where are you?" Right after he got made sheriff. He said, "Where are you on the sergeant's list?" I said, "I'm not on it." He said, "Why?" I said, "I didn't take it." He says, "Why not?" I said, "Because if you take the test and pass it, they transfer you out." I said, right now I don't punch a clock. I don't have citizen complaints. I don't have to do shit other than my job, and nobody messes with you doing your job up here. He said, well, I wouldn't make you leave. And I said, well, you weren't the sheriff. There was a guy named Block before you, remember? And he said, but if now that I know that's your policy, I'll study and I'll take the next exam. And so one day I'm with him and he says, are you studying for that exam? I said, I certainly am, Sheriff. He says, okay. He says, because, you've had a lot of fun on this department, but, it's time to start thinking of retirement in your family, get that bump, because the only way you can make lieutenant, which is where there's the big bump, is to get by sergeant first. He says, so it's time that you take this stuff seriously. I said, Sheriff, who am I to correct the sheriff of Los Angeles County? I said, you said I've had more fun than most. There ain't nobody on this department that's had more fun than me. I said, I'm studying hard because I don't want to cause you embarrassment or me embarrassment. And she said, you'll never cause me embarrassment. I said, yes, I will. I said, if I don't pass it, the guys that I work with, they don't give a shit who you are. They're just homicide cops, just like me. They'll sit there and see, told you Gil was a dumbass, and that sheriff is a dumber ass for even hiring him. So I've got to pass. I know it. And so we did. And so I have no regrets over anything I've done on this department.
Getting back to the training that kid and just kind of getting him to relax, did you ever come across someone that you thought, this isn't the job for you? Maybe you shouldn't be a cop.
Sure.
What was it? Is there a common quality trait of people that just shouldn't be a police officer?
I sent 3 back. Well, one I didn't have to send back. He went back on his own. Matter of fact, he left the department. One guy, he went back on his own. He'd have made an excellent cop. He was smart, he was sharp, he was observant, and he listened. Unfortunately for him, and I don't know where he's at today, and I won't even mention his name, but his fiance didn't like him in patrol, so he left patrol to go be a bailiff, to go to the courts and work inside where it was nice and safe. And what a loss it was. He was a good guy. I hated to see him go. I really did, because he'd have been a good one. There was another guy. God. He was, I don't know how he ever became a cop. He's an extremely religious man. And I'm not knocking anybody's religion. But it finally got to the point I said, hey, I got to ask you for a favor. He said, what's that? I said, give God 16, give me 8. Because I want to go home at night. You're going to get me killed. And it finally came down to one point. I see a guy, we're going to a assault with a deadly weapon call. We're going to assist on it. When we're driving down, I see some gangbanger running towards us. And he sees the car, and as soon as he sees the car, he books like he's going to start jumping fences. I stopped the car right at the corner, and I said, okay, you go up there, right there where we went it, you stay there. I'm going to back up a little bit. I dropped him off, I backed up to the corner, so now we've got both angles covered. And now I'm asking for backup, and I'm asking for Aero Bureau. There is no backup for me, and Aero Bureau is occupied because they're going to the gunshot victim call. And I'm looking, and I see my partner over there that, I remember his name, I just don't want to say it.
Yeah.
And he's going down there, and he's looking, and he's talking to somebody. And I'm saying, Lee. I said, are you okay? And he looks at me, and he's holding up 4 fingers like code 4, everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And I said, Lee, are you okay? And he's nodding his head and putting up 4 fingers, but I see him talking to somebody. So I said, well, forget this shit. So I just went up to him, and there was a guy laying in a rose bush, laying down in the planter box there. And as soon as I saw him, I recognized him. I had just told my trainee about him a couple of days prior. I said, you see that guy? Don't ever forget his face. That guy will kill you. He hates cops. His dad's in the joint right now. He hates cops. He'll kill you. So I'm looking and I'm saying, get up, Ernie, and get up slow. If you fart, flinch, burp, or sneeze, I'll kill you. And, oh, I'm glad I saw you, man. Hey, these guys were after me. They're chasing me down. Did you see them? I said, just get up. And I'm going to get out and hook him up because I know he's running from trouble from something. When the guys at the gunshot victim call, he's asking for more help now. So I said, okay, get out of here, Ernie, because I know Ernie, I know where he lives, I know everything about him. We leave, we go over there. Turns out Ernie had just killed a guy at the party.
Wow.
And that's what he was running from.
Wow.
And so, not a problem. I tell my partner, not a problem, we'll go to the station, we'll write a supplemental report for homicide saying, we saw the guy, contacted him, I know him, yada, 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 yada. And so I'm doing this. I said, okay, when you see him down the ground, what do you tell him? Freeze, don't move? And he said, well, no. I said, well, what were you talking about? He said, well, he was in the planter box. I was asking him if he was okay. And I'm saying, Lee, God, what's it going to take, son? You're going to get me killed. We can't do that, son. Please, I'm begging you. That's from give God 16, give me 8. And went back the next day. He wanted me to go with him. He went into the training lieutenant and told him he wanted to go back, wanted to get out, go to the jail. This job wasn't for him. And he started crying. He started boohooing, and it really affected him. And I knew this job was not for him, and I had no objection to him going back. Better off for everybody. And he shouldn't even be in the jails because they're going to eat him up in there.
Yeah.
Well, he went, and last I heard, he had left the department shortly thereafter, and he was now a minister back in the Midwest someplace, which is where he should be.
Yeah.
And God bless him, I remember the admin lieutenant or the training lieutenant said, okay, Lee, go report to the desk. You'll work the desk. We'll get you off the streets. And he says, Gil, stay here. I want to talk to you. He said, did you put him up to this? Did you intimidate him? Did you push? I said, no, I really didn't. This came out of left field for me. I said, I've been telling the guy he's not cut for patrol. I'm telling you. Very religious, very kind, very nice man, but he's going to get somebody hurt. And he says, okay. He says, and Gil, I don't want you telling anybody that he broke down crying in here the way he did. And I said, Lieutenant, I said, I can't wait to get out there and tell everybody how he cried like a little sissy. And I just went laughing down the hall. So.
Well, so, I mean, at least he recognized that, the job wasn't for him.
Yeah, and everybody knew it. Everybody loved him. He was a nice guy. You couldn't help but love him.
Yeah.
We picked up, I started all my trainees off the same way. And we'd go down, find a transient drunk, pick him up, take him down. We didn't take him to jail. We'd take him down to the midnight mission. They would take him off our hands for us and give him a shower and a warm cot. But it got him used to handling drunks and dirty drunks. So, picked him up. He's in the back seat. We're driving along. The guy's name, Trini Gurola Ortiz. I still remember the guy. And when he was drunk, I mean, he could be a fighter, but when he's not, when he was sober, he was a nice guy, and he was a shoemaker. He used to work on shoes. He could make shoes. His dad owned a shoe shop. So he knew all this stuff. So he's talking to him, and Lee's talking to him, and somehow they start talking about God in the 10 to 15-minute drive from where we picked him up down to Midnight Mission. And so we're down there, and he starts telling Lee before we get there, he says, you're the smartest cop I've ever met. And Lee said, oh, no, my training officer. He said, no. Give credit where credit's due. I've never heard any of these guys talk about God the way you do. He says, that was amazing. And he looks at me, he says, hey, Carrillo, but how do you put up with this shit all night long? So even Trini recognized he was a nice guy.
All right. So, Gil, at what point in your career do you decide homicide is where you want to be?
I can tell you right now, I had my first trainee, one of my first trainees in patrol. We're still good friends today. Art Ariano was an excellent guy. He was a good-looking young man. All the girls out there loved him. He had green eyes. They used to call him Green Eyes. And, it was husky and starch. I was husky. He was green eyes. And we'd go out there. We went out there, and it was a 3 o'clock car. We're in briefing, and all of a sudden they said, gunshot victim, you know, 22, you got 21, you got to handle, so we go out there to handle it. And it's at a T intersection in East Los Angeles where victim car is at the limit line getting ready to turn right. It's a red light. There's no traffic, so he can stop and turn, but he doesn't turn. He just waits there. Well, the guy in the back, give him a little beep, hey, wake up, you know, turn right. And the guy doesn't move. He's waiting for the red light to turn green. The guy in the back car gets up, goes and kicks his door. He kicks his door. The guy in the front car picks up a gun and goes, bam, and kills him. Light turned green and he took off. Well, it was a whodunit because the only witness we had was a lady that lived on a corner, and she only saw a very partial, limited 2 numbers on the license plate number. And she couldn't give us a description other than it was a male. Well, we had just gotten this yellow tape that they put around crime scene tape now. That was brand new, and we had login sheets now. So anybody going across that had to sign in and what purpose was, who you were, what you're doing. Well, our watch commander, who I really didn't care for, he was whoever he was, he came up and I said, excuse me, Lieutenant, you want to sign in? You know, we got these new signage. He says, need I remind you, Deputy, your position as Deputy, mine as Watch Commander? I don't sign nothing. And I'm going in. So he goes across the tape and he goes in there and he looking at things. Well, right behind him, here comes Barrett Fitzgerald, who was a homicide sergeant at the time. And old Barrett comes up, says, hello, kid. Sergeant Barrett Fitzgerald, but call me Fitz. And I said, okay, sir. Gil Carrillo. He said, no, I said Fitz. Yes, sir. Fitz. Okay, Fitz, Gil Carrillo. And he says, okay. He says, tell me, what's going on? How'd you get here? Well, we're in a briefing, Fitz, and then they got the shots fired call, gunshot victim, and I got the handle. Rolled out here it is. He said, wait a minute, hold that thought. Who is that over there in my crime scene? I said, that's a watch commander. I said, what's he doing? I said, just looking, I guess. I tried to ask him to sign the form. He wouldn't sign the form. He reminded me of my position versus his position. And he said, really? Hold that thought, I'll be right back. So Fitz now goes inside there. Fitz walks right up to him and says, hello, Lieutenant. Sergeant Barrett Fitzgerald. And he didn't say, but call me Fitz. And he said, he was a sergeant. This is Lieutenant, the watch commander. Homicide gets there. It's their crime scene. And he says, might me ask you what you're doing over here? He says, well, I just wanted to come and check out the crime scene and see the victim, see what was going on. He said, would you do me a favor? He said, what's that? He says, check it out from the other side of that yellow tape. And the lieutenant turned beet red, turned around, stomped off, got in his car, took off. And I said, yes. Man, that was awesome. So that was a 3 o'clock car. I go home that night. I come back the next day. Fitz and his partner, Jack Fuglin, are still there, same suits, been working all night, never went home. They've been working the case. And I'm saying, damn, these guys are workers. And started talking to them, and I said, man, one of these days when I get older, that's what I want to be. He says, you ever been to an autopsy? I said, no. He said, well, if you're around here when they have the post, we'll give you a call. A couple of days later, I had a court appearance. I went to my court appearance, came back, I'm in the station. I said, hey, kid, you're here. Want to go to an autopsy? We're going right now. Sure. They took me to my first autopsy. It was an eye-opener for me. And came back, and I just decided, man, when I grow up, that's what I want to be. That's my goal right there. These guys work as long as they have to work. There's work to be done. It's police work. They're doing good. They solved the damn case, and they got a conviction out of it. And that was all due to their hard, diligent, persistent work. And so that's what I wanted to do. So everything I did, I worked towards that, and I didn't want anything else. I was offered a job to go to Vice, and I was offered a job to go to child abuse. I couldn't take child abuse because I couldn't take a steady diet of kids because I love children, and that would have eaten me up. I couldn't go to Vice. I didn't want to go to Vice because I was afraid I'd get in trouble. So I said no. I turned them both down. They came to me. I said no, thank you. And then I found out a guy that I used to work for, he was my sergeant in gangs at East LA. He was now working headquarters gangs. he gave me a phone call. He says, hey, keep your nose clean. He says, Homicide's kicking your name around. I just heard it. And next thing I know, that was my dream job. And I didn't have enough time, I didn't think, because it takes an average back then, still does today, about 15 years to get sheriff's homicide. I had 9.5 years. And I get a call from the watch commander at East LA. Don James called me up and says, okay, kid, your dream came through. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you're being transferred to homicide. He says, you're gone. This is it. And I said, thank you. And I screamed and I hung up the phone. The wife came running in. She says, what's on? I said, I just got transferred into Homicide Bureau. And she said, oh, that's great, because she knew that's what I wanted. She said, when do you go? I said, shit, I don't know. I forgot to ask. So I called back, and all he said was, well, fat ass, I was waiting for your phone call. He says, it's effective Sunday morning. Call up now Lieutenant Barrett Fitzgerald. He says, he'll be your new boss. I said, thank you. And I called him up. And I said, when does the transfer take effect, sir? And he says, things haven't changed. My name is Fitz. He says, it takes effect Sunday morning. I said, okay, I'll be in there 8 o'clock Sunday morning. He said, well, don't come in on Sunday morning, 8 o'clock. He said, matter of fact, don't come in here Sunday at all. We're on a day off. We won't be there. So come in on Monday. I said, okay, I'll be there Monday at 8 o'clock. He said, well, don't come in that early either. Guys will start sauntering in about 9 o'clock, 9:30. I said, okay, sir. And that was it. And that was my first day in March 23rd, 1981, my first day in homicide.
Okay, I've got so much to unpack of what you just said. So, first of all, you said, I didn't go to Vice because I knew I'd get in trouble.
Yes.
Why do you think that? What do you think Vice would have done for you?
They either drink, they bet, and they chase whores. That's their job.
Okay.
And those are vices that I didn't want to be a part of. You know, drinking was easy.
Yeah.
So I was afraid I didn't want to lose control of my drinking. And gambling, I never was I play cards, but didn't know nothing about horses. But it was too relaxed a job for me and too loose, and I just didn't want to waste a detective slot because I wanted to wait. My dream job was Homicide Bureau.
But Gil, I think it just gets back to what we were talking about before. I mean, clearly it was your hard work, being in the right place at the right time, sort of, but it's that interaction with Fitz in the very beginning, because I'm sure he had a little bit of say.
Oh.
But even the fact that you are recognizing, I'm going to get in trouble at Vice, you have something within you that other people are seeing clearly, right?
I don't know. I can't testify the operation of somebody else's mind.
Right.
You know, everybody at that stage of the game, you know, when you're up there, people talk. Hey, who do you think would be a good fit? Mm-hmm. Okay, Jones over here. Nah, Jones has gotten in trouble before.
Right.
Or Jones doesn't get along with too many. Gil got along with everybody. Gil didn't have any enemies. Gil had never been in trouble. Gil was a worker bee.
But you got to Homicide essentially 10 years?
Yeah.
Which was very, very quick.
When I first went up there, I was very intimidated. I thought, these guys are going to dump all over me because I didn't pay my dues. You know, I'm too young of a kid to get up here. And how did I do this? But conversely speaking, because I had worked gangs, some of the guys from Homicide, they'd have gang murders out there, and Dave Kushner come up and says, hey, kid, you and your partner, you take on the murder suspect first. You guys know how to talk to these people. You take them on. So take these guys on, got a cop out. And so now these guys are saying, hey, Gil and this guy, or Gil could do this. They called me up from Pico Station, talked to the watch commander, hey, can you send Gil down here? We want some help. So now they're talking about who they're going to be taking up there. So the guys amongst themselves start throwing names out. And if your name's, if they know you, they talk about you. And that's how my name had to be.
Yeah.
And I didn't hesitate. You know, back in the day, I hate that back in the day, but early on in my career, overtime, you know, wasn't a big deal. Mm-hmm. You know, if I got off at midnight and the things were going hot, you know, on a weekend, things are blazing, shots fired, calls here, calls there. Turn in your car at midnight, grab somebody else on the inside, said, come on, let's get another car, let's go out. And you go out there and work for free.
Yeah.
it didn't matter because that was police work. That was fun stuff. So when they're calling me to help them out on a murder, nobody's submitting overtime. I'm just going, man, that's fun. That's good.
Yeah.
So they're seeing that I'm not afraid to work and I'm not asking for a lot. Well, when I went up there, I thought, man, they're gonna dump all over me because I haven't paid my dues. And the total opposite. Louis the Hat Danoff sat me down. He says, sit down, kid, I want to talk to you. And they called him the Hat because he looked like, one of these old time cops, he wore that, whatever kind of hat they called it. I don't know but we called him Louis the Hat. And Lou just said, I want you to learn something, kid. He says, you're up here. He says, you represent Sheriff's Homicide. Sheriff's Homicide has a reputation for being good, and you will keep that reputation going. Don't you dare try and do anything on your own up here because you think you're sharp. If you have any questions at all, you ask. Because if you do something that screws up a case, your ass will be gone the next day. We won't let you fall. We work as a team. We work together. You're part of us. Make us proud. So, shit, they opened their arms, and who was I to want to screw that up?
Yeah. Okay, so I got a bunch of questions for you about Homicide. First of all, how old are you when you finally get there?
I think I was 31 years old.
31 years old. I'm assuming at that point you have seen bodies before you get to Homicide.
Oh, I'd seen bodies in Vietnam and seen bodies out on the streets.
Yeah.
So bodies didn't intimidate me.
Okay, so you're used to that. What, in your mind, at this point, 20 years of experience, what makes a good homicide detective? Is there a certain quality?
You have to learn, number one, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle.
Okay.
You have to have, nobody does anything on their own. You have to have the support of good friends and a good family. My wife, and I thank the good Lord for it, she was a stay-home mom. She took care of the kids, 3 children. She raised them. She was their taxi. She was their nurse. She was everything for them.
Mm-hmm.
My wife knows that when I get a murder, I'm going to be gone anywhere from 24 to 48 hours because that's when you work hardest on your cases. If there's something to continue going, you do. And I remember testifying at one point in time where I took a cop out and the defense was trying to say I was too tired and I wasn't thinking straight. And because I testified, I'd been up 37 hours straight on the case. And
okay, so you were in the middle of talking about the attorney basically said you were too tired.
Yeah, saying I was too tired. We showed that the jury obviously believed me and I wasn't that exhausted. From South Central LA, it took me 3 stops to get here. I wouldn't even get on a freeway. Give me a cup of coffee and then drive a little more and give me another cup of coffee. I was exhausted, but not at the time that I was functioning, that I was working. Mm-hmm. Adrenaline just kept pumping in and we got through the case. And so you just keep working and that's what you have to do as a homicide investigator. It's not for everybody. When I say it's a lifestyle, I said my wife, she understood the job and she didn't put pressure on me. I missed birthdays, I missed this, I missed that. A lot of stuff I had to miss. And we try and go out, there'd be a function that we both wanted to be at and mostly she. And so I said, okay, let's go. And we'd go, come home at 1 a.m. and although I'm not drinking because I'm on call, get home and start getting undressed and they're calling me up, you got a murder. So now I'm back out. But I tried not to miss a bunch of stuff. I got to coach I got to coach my daughter and got to coach my son. Mm-hmm. And you just have to have a good partner. When my son was, my daughter, when I was coaching her, we'd have practice twice a week, and we wouldn't get out of practice till 5, 6 o'clock. And my partner would just say, go ahead and go. When you're done with practice, we hook back up. We'll just work later tonight. So he allotted for the time, and you got a good partner, you do stuff like that for each other. Yeah. And since we don't punch a clock in homicide, we work whatever hours we want. And so that's the way we did it. And that's what it takes. If you're too worried about making your fingernail appointment or getting your hair cut, a guy, you got to go play golf, then it's not the job for you. You've got to be willing to give up just about everything in order to make that it's a lifestyle.
Do you think that's the hardest part about being a homicide detective is the time commitment that you have to put into it?
I don't think there's a hard time in it. I went to a middle management school, and the instructor is going around, and you sit there, hey, my name's Gil Carrillo, 35 years, Sheriff Lieutenant, Homicide Bureau. And he looked at me and said, do you realize you're working for free? And I said, yes, sir. And he says, no, I'm serious. He says, if not for free, damn near it. I said, I understand, sir. He said, well, my only question is why? I said, well, let me say this. Didn't I hear you talking this morning with some of the guys over in the corner about you playing a golf tournament recently? And it only cost you $250? He said, yeah. And he said, that was the best golf tournament I've ever played in. I love golf. I said, that's my point. He says, what's your point? I said, you pay $250, do what you love to do. I do it for free. So as long as you love what you're doing, as long as you get some kind of gratification, then it's not work.
Yeah.
If you love it, it'll never be a day of work in your life. It's just the bad parts are dealing with defense attorneys and snitches, informants. Other than that, the job is easy.
Yeah. How about this? I was going to ask you if it takes a toll on you, but not. Let me switch that question. Were there specific cases, like for example, children? Were there specific cases that you didn't like to work?
No.
Okay.
No. Even
ones involving children?
Yeah. You put a focus on life, and even cases like the Night Stalker, where I still go out and lecture all over the U.S., but people have said, weren't you intimidated? You knew he was into Satanism. You knew he's a vicious killer. You knew what he had done, and you're going in there with no handcuffs on, no nothing. Aren't you intimidated? And said, absolutely not. Were you nervous? No. Why? Because my analogy is, if you look at a professional quarterback, he's a father, a brother, a buddy, a husband, a wife. Or maybe not a wife, but he's just a regular guy. Lives a regular life. Goes to the bar, shoots pool, goes out with a dinner with a wife, plays with the kids. But on Sunday mornings, he gets to that football field, and once he dons that equipment, everything goes out of his life, out of his mind, except for that football game. Totally focused, totally immersed on the game. As a homicide investigator, you're totally immersed in the case. Forget the victim's little kid. Forget anything about any outside detractors. Focus on the case. And be it whatever it is. A gynecologist examines a female every day. Doesn't get excited. Get him out of his doctor's outfit, and now he's out with his girlfriend, and he sees that same vaginal cavity, and now he's excited, stimulated sexually. Well, that's the way it is. You see somebody that's been run over by a 10-ton Mack truck out on the highway, and he's been decapitated, and you look, and there's blood, guts, and gore all over the place. That's all people see. I walk up and I see the guy just got done robbing a bank. I don't know where he's robbing from, but he's clutching $10,000 in his hand. First thing I see is the money in his hand. So cases don't bother me. It's the goal at the end, which is a solution.
Yeah. How about this? I'm assuming through all these cases you've done throughout your career, you've had to deal with a lot of victim families.
Yes.
Does that ever take a toll on you? And how is it? I'm assuming that you have to really establish rapport with the victims' families. How is that?
The worst part of the job is dealing with victims' families.
Okay.
Only because I don't lie. I don't lie to. I try not to lie. But you owe it to the families. You owe it to the victim. Number one, to do everything you can for the decedent. And victims' families want to know everything that's going on. And I watch Dateline and 48 Hours still religiously. I watch the stuff to learn, to see what's going on. And victims' families think that we owe them. That was my kid. You owe me this. We don't owe them nothing. We owe the best we got to give to that decedent. So I encourage people, victims' families, you call me up anytime you want to. But they call you up and they say, okay, what have you got? You got anything? I have no news to tell you. And I hate calling them up because I know I'm going to tell them I've got nothing to share with them. I know that's not what they want to hear. Well, are you meaning to tell me that you haven't done anything you haven't done? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I have nothing I can share with you. Because if I tell you, if it's your family member here in LA and I'm working your case, your son's case, and I tell you one thing about the case that the public doesn't know, and you tell your former neighbor who now lives in upstate New York, yeah, this is all they've got because he's way up there. Who's he going to know?
All right.
One phone call down here, and pretty soon a lot of people know. And then when you get the information regurgitated to you, did it come from you? Or did it come from a suspect out here? Or did it come from somebody you talked to when I asked you not to?
Yeah.
So I control everything. And that's the worst part is not being able to communicate everything with the family. The best part is the day that you get to tell the family we've now solved or we've now made an arrest in the case for the person responsible for the death of your loved one.
Did you ever work on a homicide where you knew either the victim or the victim's family?
Yes.
Did that make it that much exponentially difficult?
No, but before we go on, I got to tell you, I like that word exponentially. My son uses it all the time, and I'm saying, Jesus Christ, are you sure you came out of these loins? I mean, that's a big word, son. Maria Hernandez, March 17, 1985, and Dale Okazaki, first victims of the modern Night Stalker case. Maria Hernandez was shot, and she was shot just as she was entering through her garage into the condo proper. And Richard made a deliberate noise. She turned around, and he's coming at her point shoulder. She's got the keys to her condo in the car in her hand. She's just unlocked the door going in and hit the button, so that gives her 8 seconds from the time the garage door closes and the light goes out. So she puts her hands up like this. He's within 18 inches, pulls the trigger. She goes down like a sack of potatoes. He then just pushes her body out of the way and goes into the condo. The bullet hit the keys in her hand, never exited. She gets up, hits the button.
Okay, so hand goes up.
Hand goes up, he shoots, it stays in there, she goes down. He goes inside, she jumps up, hits the button, goes around. And if you're watching this in a movie, you'd see her running down the alley and you'd say, run, Maria, run, you're eating your popcorn. Don't be stupid. She goes around the front, Richard comes, she hears a second gunshot. And then Richard comes out the front door when she's around. They play cat and mouse around a little Volkswagen. Finally, she puts her hands up and says, don't shoot me again. You've already shot me once. And so he just puts the gun by his side and walks away. Doesn't run. Down, Milo. No. Milo, come here. And so she then, don't shoot me again. He goes away, she goes inside the house, and there's Dale Okazaki dead. She calls 911, cops get down there. I get down there eventually, and I'm doing the crime scene on the inside. I'm in the living room. The front door is about 3 feet higher off the ground than street level. It's dark outside. I'm silhouetted, and just like if you're on stage, when you're lit up, you can't see the crowd out there. Well, I'm silhouetted, I can't see the crowd, and the deputy comes in and he says, excuse me, Gil, there's a lady out here who says she's Maria's mother, would like to talk to you when you get a minute. And I said, okay, tell her to give me 2 minutes max. I just want to finish taking these measurements. I'll be right with her. Well, I don't even do that. The door's open. I hear somebody say, Gilbert, is that you? And shit, nobody called me Gilbert. I'm Gil. I'm too cool for Gilbert now. And I said, yes, it is. She goes, it's me, Pauline. And I said, Pumpkin, is that you? And she says, yes. Well, Pumpkin grew up 3 doors down from me. My mom and dad baptized Maria.
Wow.
As a child. Unfortunately, about 6 months later, Pauline got divorced. They moved out, and I never saw her again up until this night.
Wow.
So I did know somebody, but it didn't make a difference.
Yeah.
It really didn't make it. The defense tried to make it a difference, but there was no difference. She was just another victim.
Okay, so now that we're on the Night Stalker, and I don't want to go into a whole bunch, for the audience, if you want a really great interview with Gil, tune into Truth Nation podcast with Bodner and Mark. They did a really in-depth interview with you. It was really great. But I did have some questions about this case. So can you give a little bit of background about Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker? How many people was he alleged to kill? What was it all about?
We allege 14 the serial killer started what we call the modern series March 17, 1985, killed 14 people. He was arrested August 31st, 1985. We know he's good for 2 up in San Francisco. And there was an attempted murder down in Orange County. During the course of the trial, we dismissed 1 in the interest of justice, and that was Patty Elaine Higgins, because that was the only case that stood on its own. We could link the rest of the cases through evidence, through either ballistics, footprint, or physical identification. Patty Elaine Higgins had none of it, and that was the only case. We know he was good for it, but it didn't link to anything else. So the defense made a motion. They wanted to sever that case. And the judge was going to grant it. He told the DA, I'm going to grant it. We'll make a decision tomorrow, but I'm leaning towards granting their wish. Them thinking, okay, we'll do this one, and if they can beat us on this one, then we'll do the rest of them. But the judge warned them, if in fact I deny it for tomorrow, then you got to be ready to proceed on the remaining 13, on the remaining cases. And they said, yes, sir. He says, I'm not kidding. You better be ready. He said, okay. They came into court the next day and they made the motion. And the judge says, well, people, do you have anything to say? Because the court's getting ready to grant their motion. He says, yeah, the people make a motion. People make a motion. We dismiss that 1 case in the interest of justice. And we're ready to proceed on the remaining 13. And the judge says, well, there you go. Case dismissed. And we're ready to proceed. And they're going, well, Your Honor, we weren't, we thought. And he said, no. Be back at 1:30 this afternoon. Be ready to take your first witness. Wow. I warned you, be ready. And these guys, they were incompetent. They didn't know what they were doing.
How old were you when you started that case?
Oh, 35.
Okay, so you're a co-lead on that case. Are you relatively young in terms of, is that one of your first cases, or you have experience at that point?
Well, you get cases from the day you get there.
Right.
I had no high profile, no serial cases like that.
Right.
But contrary to popular belief, Frank didn't work with me on the case from beginning to end. Frank and I, the first case we hooked up on was June the 28th, Patty Elaine Higgins. He was my acting lieutenant during part of that time, but he wasn't my partner.
So the reason I ask is there was a little bit of stuff. So first of all, Ramirez, and I didn't know this until I watched this interview, there was some stuff about him abducting kids and abusing them.
Yes.
And you kind of put that together, and I think it's fair to say that other people didn't necessarily go along with your theory. Is that fair to say?
That's mildly stated. You can edit any of this shit you want out.
I'm not going to edit anything.
I was being called a young punk Mexican motherfucker because I was just trying to build a name for myself. Okay. They didn't believe it. I owe everything about those kids in the case to a doctor, retired Dr. Robert Morneau, retired FBI agent, who I took 2 semesters of advanced criminal investigation pertaining to sex crimes from him out of Cal State, LA. Best instructor I've ever had. Required more work than any instructor I've ever had. I learned from him not only the sex part of it, but how to teach. He made me a better instructor because he used humor as a vehicle to get his point across. And so I learned that when you make people laugh or smile, they pay attention to you more than if you're dull and boring. And so I learned from him, and that's how I could see some of these cases. The kids, they were given the same physical descriptions. There was a shoe print that came about. That shoe print, how important was it? On January 9, 1985, 1,356 pair of Model 440 Avias arrived from Taiwan for distribution throughout the U.S., of which 6 pair ended up in the state of California, 1 pair ended up in L.A. So You got a footprint. You have physical descriptions. They had stained gap teeth, disheveled hair, pungent odor, black members only clothing. And so when I have surviving victim Maria Hernandez and some of the other little girls, coupled with a shoe print and being able to identify, there it is. We had a meeting, I believe it was held around April the 10th in Monterey Park, where investigators from Monterey Park, LAPD, Montebello, and some child abuse investigators from my department were there to talk about the child abuse cases. I heard about it, so I went down there. There was a member of the FBI there, Agent Greenwich, and everybody gave their cases, and I was the last one. And I said, I think they're all tied to these murders. And so they all said, oh, very interesting. That's a good theory. We'll bear that in mind. So you give him all your paperwork. His job was to send it all back to Quantico, Virginia, to the Behavioral Science Unit for analyzation. Well, he sent everybody's paperwork except for mine, because he thought I was full of hot air. He didn't send mine, and they didn't find it. They didn't find that out until my captain called the FBI and said, hey, here we are in July. We never heard shit back from this paperwork. And they said, we never received it. And then they started doing some looking into it and found out he just took it upon himself, thought that I was full of shit and didn't send it.
So, 2 questions. How do you deal with that when you have all these naysayers saying you're full of shit? And the second question is, after you turn out to be right, are these guys coming to you and going, hey, we owe you an apology?
No. And no. The one guy from LAPD, they were partners. They had a footprint on a kid. And so a guy from Montebello, homicide detectives are very quiet about who they share their information with. They have child abuse investigators are like that because they don't know who they can trust. So they had a female child investigator back there, and she wouldn't give a shit on child abduction. But the homicide investigator over there, Dan Hibbard, called me up and says, hey, Gil, I found a picture of that footprint on the girl. I think you're going to be very interested in this. So I went down there, I saw it, and they had a scale in there, a 12-inch ruler. And so I called up my lieutenant. I said, hey, I found some evidence that finally links these things. And he says, Gil, I got LAPD in here talking to the guys right now. Because we had that shoe print at the Double Zazar murder in Whittier. And he says, theirs is a size 10. I said, they are full of shit. I said, put him on the phone. He put him on the phone. I said, hey, I'm looking at your footprint taken by your photographer, a 1-to-1 with a rule. And that shoe's 12 inches in length on your picture, 11 and a half, 12 inches long. He said, are you serious? I said, yes. He said, we write down. So he came down, and then he told me, he copped out, him and his partner. He copped out. They were in a hurry to get out of there, so he stood up next to it, put his foot, he wore wingtips over the shoe print, couldn't see it. He said, okay, it's got to be about size 11, size 10, and the guy's got to be about 5'7". That's the way it went. His partner says, I am so sorry, this is totally off. So they had to go back and change everything on their guy. The other guys calling me names. How did I get through it? 2 things. Number 1, good friends. And a few people that had confidence in me. Very few. That's what got me through it. Saying you can't quit. Don't give up on this shit. You got to keep going. And it didn't bother me at all because I understood nobody, not even to this day, nobody in criminal history has ever done what Richard was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Nobody's crossed fences like that.
Yeah.
And so I could understand why they wouldn't believe me. And that didn't bother me, didn't believe me. The only part that I didn't like was them calling me a young punk Mexican motherfucker. Aside from that, I'm good.
When you make the arrest and you finally get down, is sitting down to talk with him, a couple questions. First of all, when I've spoken to other homicide detectives, in your line of work, do you see a difference between truly evil people and people who either just get caught up in the moment, make a mistake, whatever, and they're killing another person? Do Do you ever see that distinction between a truly evil person that should not be walking the face of the earth and these other people that are...
I never make that distinction. My
Okay.
job is not to figure out personalities.
Okay.
He either did it or he didn't do it. Whether he did it viciously or accidentally, it's not me. I just present the fact. I need you to talk, but I need to get as much shit as I can. I don't care why you did it. It's not my job.
Yeah.
Richard said, "Why do you think I am the way I am?" I told him. I said, "I don't know, Rich. If I knew that, I'd be a doctor making a lot more money than I am as a cop.
Yeah.
I don't know, nor do I give a shit." He said, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "I think we're going to beat you in court. Don't you watch TV? The guys in white hats always win."
How was it talking to him, though? Just knowing that he was...
Like talking to you right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was probably one of the most articulate murderers I've ever talked to. Self-taught, self-read, and I've never raised my voice at him. We never got angry at each other. I wasn't his buddy. I didn't invite him down for dinner, but we got along.
Wow. Okay, couple last questions for you. First of all, I want to... Tell me why you have the nickname. What's your nickname?
The Kukui?
Yeah.
That's because when I was when I was a patrol deputy, one of my very dear friends, who's now deceased, he was a sergeant, Richard Arias. He had just come back from working years of intelligence. So he had been out of patrol for years. Got promoted to sergeant, went to East LA Patrol, but told the captain, "You know what? Before I put these stripes on," he says, "I'd like to go back out as a trainee to learn, learn what it's like to be a real cop again." So he got a prowler call. It was around an apartment building, and he went around one side of the apartment. I told my partner, I said, "Watch this, I'll be back." Went around this side, and there were some big bushes there, and I got behind a bush. And when he came walking by, I screamed, and I jumped out of the bush, and I grabbed his hand, because I knew the first thing he was going to do was go for his gun. So I screamed and grabbed his hand. He screamed, and he just said, "Jesus Christ," I thought it was the Kukui, which is the boogeyman. And so that name stuck with me. The gang members out there in the streets were calling me Kukui before you know it. Everybody was calling me. Some of my old friends today still call me the Kukui.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to ask you this question. So I read a book about LAPD homicide, and I wanted to ask you what your experience was. When you are working these cases and going and trying to talk to witnesses and developing that, is there a difference between your witnesses, what the cooperation level is between racial backgrounds? So like for example, LAPD, I was reading a lot of stuff about the black community, and they don't like to cooperate. Did you have that same resistance, either the black or Hispanic or white or Asian, or it didn't matter for you?
No, it didn't matter. There's guys on my department that don't like blacks. There's guys on my department that don't like Mexicans. You got to throw out your personal feelings. Your job is to gather information, and it doesn't matter what race they are. And no matter what race they are, even if they don't like Mexicans, you got to try and break through that barrier
But
to
did you
get
have
them to like you.
Yeah, but did you have any resistance from specific communities that didn't want to talk with you or cops in general?
Well, yeah, they're intimidated to talk to cops. You can't go into somebody's neighborhood, even in a soft clothes. You can't go into somebody's neighborhood, because in the neighborhood, everybody knows what's going on.
Okay.
So you need to get them out of the neighborhood if you want to do some really good interviewing.
But same resistance. It didn't matter whether they're white, black, Hispanic, whatever.
Yeah, I just didn't run into a bunch of resistance.
Okay.
We've arrested people. We got to some guy's house. We're going to take him to jail. My partner realized neither one of us had handcuffs.
Okay.
And just told him, I said, "Okay, we're going to treat you like a man. You behave like a man, we'll treat you like a man. If you do anything less than that, we'll shoot you in the back if you try to run away.
Okay.
Deal? Deal." Got in the car, took him down, took him to jail, no problem.
Okay. All right. One question before I ask you my final two questions that I always ask. What's your relationship with George Lopez? How did you have that relationship? What did you do the podcast? What was
George
that?
Lopez is a true crime fan.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know George Lopez. I used to, I'd paid to see him good money at least 5-6 times. I love his humor. But then he went political on me. And I don't play politics, I don't play religion. So I stopped. You lost my money. And then a buddy of mine called me up. He says, "Gil, I just heard on the radio George Lopez said, anybody know Gil Carrillo, give him a call. Here's a number." So I gave him a call. He called me back. We talked 30, 45 minutes on the phone. He wanted me to go golfing with him. He was in this true crime shit. Wanted me to go golfing with him. I said, I don't golf. He says, come on. I said, no, I don't know how to golf. And he says, oh, come on. He says, I'll get you. I said, I got some clubs. I said, but if I go out golfing with you, I'm going to turn into a comedian because you're going to laugh your ass off at me. I said, no. And he said, well, how about a beer? Would you go out and have a beer? I said, sure. He said, okay. And he gave me an address, meet him. I went down there. It's residential neighborhood, just like driving down here, and then right middle of the block, nondescript cinder block building with 3 doors, 3 different companies. No names, just 3 different addresses, 3 different doors. And I go and I open the door to one, the address, walk inside. Now it's a little holding place. You press the buzzer, they allow you to go in. You go in, it's a studio in there. And I walk in, I said, where do I go? Where do I sit? He said, well, just go right here. I said, where do I sit? And he said, just sit right there. And it's a table with microphones set up. And he had his producer in there, and he had a comedian, Bobby Lee, who's funny as all get go. And we just start bullshitting. Nobody says quiet on the set, rolling, nothing. We just start bullshitting. And it was fun. It was easy going. I'm laughing and carrying on, and we had a good thing going. And George just said, hey, can you come back next Monday? I said, I can't. I'm busy. What about the Monday after? I said, I think I'm booked, you know. And he says, I'll be in touch with you. I said, all right. So next thing I know, he's calling me back. I started with episode 11. The last one we did together was episode 97.
Wow.
I went 2 years with him.
Wow.
It was great. It was so much fun. It was like going to a George Lopez show every weekend, every week. I loved going out there. We drink his beer. We laughed our ass off. And the only thing I hated was driving back, because by this time he was in Burbank and I'd come home in traffic. I hated it.
Yeah.
Well, then George just got too busy doing television. He's still doing weekend stand-ups out of the state, doing movies. I mean, he's a busy, busy man. And about 6 months before the show ended, he asked me, why didn't I take it over? You know, why didn't I just do the podcast on my own? I said, no, brother, I'm riding your coattails. You're the star here. I'm your Ed McMahon. You're Johnny Carson. And he says, okay, about 3 months before we ended, he says, you know, the only reason I'm still doing this is because you make it fun. And he said, I love you, brother. I said, well, I love you. Thank you. And it was fun. But then the last show we did, there was a comedian, Steve Trevino, and I hope he has diarrhea the rest of his life. He went ahead and he got up there and he's talking about he's talking about how he's had it rough as a comedian. He's been in the business for 20 some years, and you know he still hasn't made the big time yet. But he's got this guy named Ralph. He kept mentioning Ralph, and I can't remember his last name. And he's a young, up-and-coming Mexican comedian out of Texas, I want to say. And George finally hit him. He says, why do you keep bringing him up? And he says, well, I think we owe it to each other to help each other out. He's a young Mexican kid, and we owe it to bring him up. That's why I keep throwing his name out. He says, hey. He says, I'm here promoting you, and you're promoting somebody else? Fuck that guy. You know, we got to do this all on our own. You know, you just don't step up here and do this like, and he went off. Next day, social media, Trevino put it out, and this next, I guess it was Trevino, somebody put it out, and they badmouthed the dog snot out of George. And when George wouldn't respond to their actions, then they went after his wife, after his daughter, and it was all these commandos behind a computer that were doing all this stuff. And George just said, it's over, not doing it. And I was the only one over there that had George's personal information. And I knew George, been to his house, knew his personal secretary. And I said, hey, George ain't answering my calls. I said, I want to go to spring training with the Dodgers. I said, but I don't know if I can go because, you know, are we going to record again? And she says, well, I can't tell you what he's going to do, but if I were you, I'd go ahead and don't miss the Dodger trip. And she says, and Gil, I said, I just want to be a pain in the ass. She says, you're not a pain in the ass. George loves you. He doesn't consider you a friend. He considers you family. He wants to talk to you personally. Well, I'm still waiting for that personal phone call. You know, and I don't bug him. I don't do anything. He's a different man, and God bless him. He's got this new show going. It's the 3rd season or 4th season on his new show. And wish him nothing but the best.
Okay, 2 last questions. Did law enforcement affect your family?
Yeah, it made my wife stay with me. She didn't have to go to work. No, no,
Really?
no. Law enforcement did not. Just before I retired, or right after, just before I retired, I think, Channel 2 came out here and they did a 4-minute and 28-second interview on television with me, talking about my career, and they were saying a legend is retired. And they normally reserve that shit for chiefs of police, big guys.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody else that has ever gotten that, but I got it. And they said, you'd think that after all these years of everything he's done and seen, that he'd be a little bit biased in his outlook, looked through life with a jaundiced eye, and said, just contrary. I still have faith in humanity. 90% of the people that we in law enforcement deal with are good people, 10% are bad. Unfortunately, we have to spend 90% of our time on the 10% that are bad and not the 90% that are good.
Yeah, and I think you just answered this, because that's always the last question I always ask. Can you look back on your life when you started law enforcement till now? Has your attitude toward people changed? I think you just said
No, not at
not at
all.
all.
And it's people like this man here that's still working, still keep in touch, good friends. This guy and his partner have taken care of me so much during my lean times when I was sick and not doing well. When they cut my gut, he was at the hospital over there. Matter of fact, he sat there. I didn't realize until after. You sat there, in my room for 3 hours while I was asleep. That he was there. I didn't even know he was there. And he just got, and then people like that keep me going.
What do you think it is in your personality? You think it was your parents? You think it was the way that you were brought up that gives you that optimistic view on life, that your attitude hasn't changed about people?
I just think that there's a lot more to life than people see. If people stop dwelling, and I learned that when I came back from Vietnam, if people stop dwelling on all the negative shit that there is, and my glass is perennially, I'm not an optimist, but my glass is always half full. And conversely speaking, I razz my wife all the time because her glass is always half empty. There's always a reason why and why not. Here's a commercial plug for you, Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx just did a special. I was in the hospital the night before I got released, and I watched it on my iPad. He did a special. He was out of the public eye for over a year.
Right.
And then it came out. He did it with his special. It's a one-man special where he talks about the reason he was out because he had a stroke. And he talks about his rehabilitation. And he was in a coma for 20 days before he even realized that he was in a hospital. He was in a wheelchair. And he said, hey, wait a minute, I'm Jamie Foxx. This ain't me. I got cards, I got money, I got this, I got that. This can't be happening to me. And it talks all about his rehabilitation. And he even talks to God. He says, God, you can't be doing this to me. I got 2 kids. I got 2 daughters. I still got to take care of them. I got to do this. And he says, God just told me, he says, hey, I gave up my only begotten son for you. And Jamie Foxx's response, because Jamie Foxx just said, whoa, why are you bringing up that old shit? So it was a funny special. It was good. And in the end, he says, me having a stroke wasn't a bad thing. It was a good thing. God was giving me a second chance at life. So I'm back, and he does everything. And so this that happened to me, by no stretch of the imagination am I a reformed whore. I try to be the same guy, never forget where I came from. And this, God gave me a second chance. They said it was pretty nip and tuck when they did this to me, and it was serious shit, and they're lucky they got it in time. And so it was just, it was a second chance. I'm taking full advantage of it.
Yeah, and for the audience, because I've obviously probably edited part of this out at this point, but Gil had a medical issue, and luckily he's on the mend and everything's good.
I'm on the mend and everything's good. And I'm here with my bud. Here with my bud Vic.
Gil, thank you very much for the interview. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Say hello to Mr. Bodner for me.
Will do.